You will be hollow. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. This quote is from British essayist and ardent advocate against totalitarianism, George Orwell, from his book, 1984. This quote is alarmingly reminiscent of the World Economic Forum's claim for its Agenda 2030, that you will own nothing and be happy. The World Economic Forum and its leadership are succeeding in taking steps toward what they call the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Great Reset. What exactly is this so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, and what does it mean for the masses of humanity? That is what we will be covering in this video. One cannot begin to understand what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is without first understanding who is behind the push toward the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab is the founder and the executive chair of the World Economic Forum. Schwab first coined the term the Fourth Industrial Revolution in his 2016 book of the same name. The book outlines his vision for this revolution, which includes drastic changes to the world as we know it currently. The speed at which these changes will occur are, in Klaus's own words, will be like a tsunami. This future world in which Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum envision would make George Orwell and Aldous Huxley blush. A world where digital, physical, and biological realities will be fused together in what would seem like a horrific science fiction film. A world that will put technology over humanity. Advances in robotics, surveillance, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum computing, and virtual realities, among many other technologies, will be the tools utilized in this so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. Imagine a world where every aspect of our lives will be integrated into a digital ecosystem, controlled by the cooperation of world governments, big tech, and the corporate and societal elite, the new stewards of society. A world with reimagined systems of governance, financial systems, healthcare, and civil services. The World Economic Forum's self-proclaimed mission statement is the promotion of public and private cooperation to master the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Centralization is a clear goal of the Great Reset. The Great Reset, which is used synonymously with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Knowing that centralization is of the utmost importance to this largely unelected group of elites, then it is of no surprise that around the world we are seeing a push towards centralized digital currencies, commonly referred to as CBDCs, centralized control of agriculture and GMO seeds, and the centralization of corporate media that control the dissemination of information, and their fact-checkers who tell us what is true and censor what they deem to be false. A modern-day Ministry of Truth. In Orwell's 1984, written on the Ministry of Truth, are three slogans: war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. These paradoxical slogans are not hypocrisy, and they are not unintentional. Rather, Orwell goes on in an excerpt from the book to explain that the Ministry of Peace concerns itself with war, the Ministry of Truth with lies, the Ministry of Love with torture, and the Ministry of Plenty with starvation. These contradictions are not accidental, nor do they result from ordinary hypocrisy. They are deliberate exercises in doublethink. In this New World Order, democracy, freedom, and personal sovereignty could be surely lost to a new form of tyrannical control. Society could be more reminiscent of the feudalistic societies of old, one where people become subjected to modern-day serfdom. This hypothetical nightmare scenario will be ushered in ostensibly as a safer, more sustainable, and more secure way of living, in order to engineer consent into one's own servitude. Tyrants have historically been very cunning in their ability to convince the populace that they indeed benefit from tyrannical rule. As Etienne de La Boetie, French writer and political theorist, explains in his 1577 book, The Discourse on Voluntary Servitude, quote, Roman tyrants provided the city wards with feasts to cajole the rabble. Tyrants would distribute largesse, a bushel of wheat, a gallon of wine, and a sesterce, and then everybody would shamelessly cry, "Long live the king." The fools didn't realize that they were merely recovering a piece of their own property, and that their ruler could not have given them what they were receiving without first taking it from them. A man might one day be presented with a sesterce and gorge himself at the public feast, loading Tiberius and Nero for handsome liberality, who on the morrow would be forced to abandon his property to their avarice, his children to their lust, and his very blood to the cruelty of these magnificent emperors, without offering any more resistance than a stone or a tree stump. Are we too being cajoled into a new system of tyrannical rule under the guise of benefiting from its safety, security, and sustainability? With the promotion of digital identification, digital and programmable currency, social credit scores, and the like, it would appear that we most certainly are. But are people aware of this? Or are we too lost in the distractions of the day? Too fascinated and enveloped with these distractions to notice or even care? The sheer number of distractions in our modern day, from smartphone applications, social media platforms, professional sports, and reality shows, are yet another powerful tool out of the tyrannical toolbox. La Boetie elaborates on this diversion technique in his book in reference to ancient times. Plays, farces, spectacles, gladiators, strange beasts, medals, pictures, and other such opiates. These were for the ancient peoples the bait toward slavery, the price of their liberty, the instruments of tyranny. By these practices and enticements, the ancient dictators so successfully lulled their subjects under the yoke, that the stupefied peoples, fascinated by the pastimes and vain pleasures flashed before their eyes, learned subservience as naively, but not so creditably, as little children learn to read by looking at bright picture books. Have we been lulled under the yoke of slavery because we have been stupefied by our own modern-day pleasures? If the Great Reset is to include even more distractions like the metaverse, interactive virtual realities, indistinguishable from our own, a real-life matrix, then how will we ever escape our ignorant servitude? La Boetie's solution to this problem is non-violent, elegant, and simple. He writes, "Resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. I do not ask that you place your hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer. Then you will behold him, like a great colossus whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of his own weight, and break in pieces." In a hypothetical situation, what if one speaks out against this new system? Will their government freeze access to their digital currency? Will they restrict their ability to travel or buy certain goods and commodities? What if speaking out against the system lowers your credit score and affects your ability to receive a loan? Or worse, imagine if you have an RFID chip implanted, marketed to you as a more convenient way of payment, more secure, more sustainable. No more need for IDs and passports. All of one's information could conveniently be stored on a biochip. If this doesn't make you afraid, I don't know what will. Is it possible that these scenarios can become a reality, or has it already begun? Well, unfortunately, it has. And Klaus Schwab and the WEF are applauding those currently implementing these strategies for control. The Chinese government announced its social credit system back in 2014, which is coincidentally the same year Schwab released the book The Fourth Industrial Revolution. With its surveillance state and social credit system, in fact, according to a 2019 article published by The Guardian, the Chinese government has already restricted Chinese citizens 17.5 million times from buying plane tickets and 5.5 million times from purchasing train tickets, according to the article that cites the National Public Credit Information Center as the source of these figures. The Chinese citizens were denied access to these basic human rights by their government based on their blacklisted social credit status. According to a new Chinese government document, the intention of the social credit system is to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. Biochips and social credit scores are just one very small part of our potential future. What role does climate change have to play in the Great Reset? Climate change and what the WEF calls sustainable development is also a major part of the Great Reset in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The Forum has produced 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, for the year 2030 in the name of saving the world. But when one looks beyond the ostensible claims of sustainability, it is clear that there is more than meets the eye. One byproduct of this so-called sustainability will be the transition to electric vehicles, or EVs. When looked at on the surface like the rest of the development goals outlined by the WEF, the transition to electric vehicles sounds like a great idea. But when you ask yourself a few common sense questions like, where is the cobalt coming from for these EV batteries? What are the power plants using to generate the energy necessary to charge an EV? What environmental impact does strip mining EV battery materials have? And what impact does this have on the communities where these mines are located? Come to find out, the strip mining for EV battery materials is extremely environmentally harmful. Further, many of these mines are in developing nations that exploit child labor to mine these materials. Current cobalt mining is reminiscent of Belgian King Leopold II's reign of terror during his exploitation campaign of the Congo's rubber resources in the late 1800s. This resulted in the enslavement of the population, accompanied by widespread atrocity and death. The year now is different, but the game is the same. Only this time the resource is cobalt. It would seem the Congo's nightmare of the reign of terror is repeating itself today by similarly exploiting the population in order to harvest resources. Is exploiting child labor to reduce production costs sustainable? What results will EVs have on human transportation? In the name of combating climate change, each individual may have a personal carbon footprint, which once your daily, weekly, or monthly carbon quota is met, your ability to travel may be turned off. Is this the end of free travel? Will travel be regulated by the state to keep travel within your city only? What if only when special allowances are made by the state that you can travel outside of your city? What if your social credit score is too low and your government turns your EV off? These scenarios do not resemble freedom, democracy, or personal sovereignty. But this is what could be heading our way, and sooner than you may think. Electric vehicles are just skimming the surface of the WEF's climate agenda. In 2022, the world saw major uprisings from the agricultural industries in Canada and the Netherlands, from farmers struggling to be in compliance with nitrogen emissions. According to a July 2022 article published by the BBC, quote, the Dutch government proposals for tackling nitrogen emissions indicate a radical cut in livestock. They estimate 11,200 farms will have to close, and another 17,600 farmers will have to significantly reduce their livestock. The BBC article goes on to explain the possibility of forced buyouts for non-compliant farms. The Dutch government is aiming to cut its nitrogen emissions by the year, you guessed it, 2030. Isn't it odd how these publicly elected governments are imposing regulations that align perfectly with a non-elected and non-governmental organization, commonly referred to as NGOs, such as the World Economic Forum? It's clear to see who is influencing who. You may be thinking, this could never happen in my country. Sorry to inform you, but the WEF has many member nations that buy into its mentality of a globalized world that would be managed by a selected and centralized group of world governments, central banks, and multinational corporations, among with societal billionaires like Bill Gates. The World Economic Forum does not officially announce who its members are. However, its annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland is telling of its members. For instance, its regular attendees include representatives of the US, UK, Switzerland, Germany, India, France, Japan, China, the Netherlands, and Canada, to name a few. Accompanied by these countries, of course, are private multinational corporations, prominent NGOs, the United Nations, International Monetary Fund, and members of the billionaire class, celebrities, and journalists. All handpicked by the forum, as this is an invitation-only event and not open to the public. Is the Fourth Industrial Revolution in the concept of a great societal reset in humanity's best interests, or is it in the best interest of the elite class of the world? Beware of the wolf in sheep's clothing. Alexandr Solzhenitsyn was a Russian novelist, political dissident, and critic of communism. Solzhenitsyn was imprisoned by the Soviet government for criticizing the then leader Joseph Stalin in a letter he wrote during his time in the Red Army. Solzhenitsyn spent 8 years in the brutal Russian gulags, and upon his long-awaited release, he authored the famous book The Gulag Archipelago, detailing the unthinkable atrocities done to him and his fellow man while suffering the result of an oppressive government and a tyrannical ruler. I will leave you with a quote from Solzhenitsyn's book in regard to his thoughts on the centralization of power. Unlimited power in the hands of limited people always leads to cruelty. If you are wondering what you can do to help change this potential future, I would encourage you to understand these concepts in detail and be as educated in this subject matter as possible. And always remember that knowledge is power, and question everything. This video was intended to offer a different perspective of our potential future than that of the common narrative. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and giving this video a thumbs up. Most importantly, share this video if you thought it was important on what the future of humanity may look like. I will be creating more content related to the subject matter of this video, where we can go into a deep dive and isolate some of the concepts. Links to the books and associated news articles will be provided in the description below for your convenience. Thank you so much for watching.